morning, good afternoon, and good night, depending on which country you live in. And welcome to our international event entitled Persecuting Spiritual Teachers, the Tai Ji Men case, a hybrid webinar. Some of our distinguished panelists will in fact speak from the Tai Ji Men Academy in Walnut, California, while others are connected online from different places. Today's webinar comes just after the World Teachers' Day on October the 5th. The World Teachers' Day is an annual international day established in 1994 to commemorate the signing of the 1966 recommendation by two United Nations agencies, UNESCO and the International Labour Organization, concerning the status of teachers. That recommendations relates to a variety of subjects, ranging from working conditions to the continuing education of teachers. Let me then very briefly, underline the crucial importance of teachers for virtuous society. In fact, no one can under-evaluate it. Teachers are key elements in the transmission of values that sustain a community. In fact, teaching in schools means not only communicating a set of notions, but offering a particular aid to the general educational task needed in a human community, working with families in a subsidiary way. In this regard, teachers work side by side, even implicitly, with families, and should never contrast them in their guiding principles. As families are the fundamental and foundational cell of a society, teachers working with families help families to implement their vocation better. Teachers have then great responsibilities toward the rising generation. Whereas they transmit notion and values, teachers serve as great instruments to fortify and pass down all those elements that form the cultural identity of a human community. At this point, I just need to cite the dreadful case of the Cultural Revolution in Communist China, a brutal experiment of social engineering of a Gnostic brand that was terminated only by the very death of Mao Zedong in 1976. One of the key tenets of the Cultural Revolution was the literal overturning of all that was pivotal in Chinese society. It is in fact from this ideological program that the Cultural Revolution got its grand, all-encompassing name. So, for example, workers became masters and vice versa. And notably, students sat on pulpits while teachers went down to the desk in the classroom. The clear attempt was that of destroying all that was known in China, labeled old and reactionary, also when it was not, to rebuild the world from the beginning. Most of that attempt was achieved, and what was not achieved resulted in a number of deaths that scholars evaluate up to 20 million. Again, the destruction of the normal relationship between teachers and students was strategically crucial to that ominous project of total subversion. So much for the preciousness of teachers. The teachers have also their dark side. French philosopher Paul Ricoeur, in his book De l'interprétation, essay sur Sigmund Freud, published in 1965, coined the expression school of suspicion to describe the collective cultural aim of such famous authors as Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, and Friedrich Nietzsche. While proclaiming very different and even opposite philosophies, in Ricoeur view, the ultimate attempt of Marx, Freud, and Nietzsche is to teach that reality fundamentally lies, hence the name of school used regarding them, and that all existing authorities are false. As masters or teachers of suspicion, their credo is not the legitimate critique of existing authorities for their mistakes and misdeeds, but the basic delegitimization of the very concept of authority in itself. From the 1960s, the school of suspicion has gained importance in the West, and many teachers in schools, even today, still work on that premise, causing serious damage among students and through students to the whole society and cultural identity of people. Our topic today concerns spiritual teachers and the persecution they often suffer. As all teachers are, also spiritual teachers are essential to the well-being of a society. Above all, it is not the matter of a state to decide the role that spiritual teachers should play in a spiritual community. The case of Tai Ji Men in Taiwan, where a spiritual group worked for the well-being of the world society, while its grandmaster or shifu, its central teaching authority, is prevented from fulfilling his vocation for ideological reasons, teaches a cautionary tale to everyone. And this is what we will hear today from our distinguished panelists and testimonial that I will be going to introduce you right after an important video that we are seeing now.
In this world of shocking waves, let's unite our prayers and light up hope together.
Peace and love for everybody, for our world, for our future.
I pray daily for peace, but also for justice, because without justice and freedom, especially freedom of religion and belief, there cannot be any true peace.
I wish for a more just world where everyone will live in peace and harmony.
Peace and love from Africa.
Let's unite all the good thoughts and pray for the world.
Thank very much the Tai Ji Men Academy for reminding us a simple but crucial question, prayer, the value of prayer. And it's very important because we oftentimes, as we do today, we speak about religious freedom, religious liberty, which is the first most important thing. But we try to sometimes intellectualize and forget that religious freedom regards religion, and religion is based on prayer. And our friends of the Tai Ji Men Academy just remembered us this fundamental dimension for human harmony and peace among nations in a time like this, where we needed probably more than in any other period of history. It is now my pleasure to introduce you, to invite Mr. Steven Inada to speak, our first panelist today. He is the executive president of International Committee on the International Committee on Nigeria. Mr. Inada, you're welcome.
Right, thank you, Marco. And also, I hope after this meeting, you deserve some rest from all your trips. Thank you for anchoring this moment, this special occasion, which is very, very great to me as a cause to pursue with brothers and sisters. When Massimo told me about this again, I started reflecting, and I was asking myself that ordinarily, I don't want to intellectualize. Rather, I would like to be pragmatic and see what practical ways we can advance this cause we call the Tai Ji Men case. It's my privilege and honor to speak to this subject, persecuting spiritual teachers, the Tai Ji Men case, an international webinar organized after the World Teachers Day. Like almost everybody has a favorite teacher, someone who went above and beyond to encourage you because they could see your potential. On October 5, the global community, especially the United Nations and its ancillary institutions, had taken time to celebrate World Teachers Day, a global event launched by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, in 1994, like Marco rightly pointed out. Now, everyone is a learner, and you don't learn without a formal or an informal teacher. Parents are the primary teachers, and spiritual leaders become the shaper of thoughts and connector to a higher authority, and they hold a lot of influence on both parents and children. This is what makes the issue of Tai Ji Men case very important in regards to Teachers Day and the persecution of spiritual teachers. For example, Jesus Christ was a teacher. For those who are Christians, they understand that he came to teach, but the Roman government and the Jewish leaders persecuted him. So from history, we have actually seen how many almost every spiritual leader has been persecuted across ages and phases. So religious persecution of religious teachers are on the margins, and you hardly see them being mentioned when it comes to non-Abrahamic faith religion. When we talk about persecuting spiritual teachers, it should be holistic and all-encompassing. Tai Ji Men founder and Tai Ji Men case are victims of post-truth. Post-truth, as Marco reiterates, as he describes post-truth as an intellectual climate where objective facts are less important than subjective beliefs and even mere emotion. Marco recently, in his sterling paper presented in webinar co-organized by CESNO and Human Rights Without Frontiers, termed as For a Correct Information on the Tai Ji Men case, says Tai Ji Men is guilt by innocence, cleared from all accusations. It continues to be harassed by corrupt bureaucrats who live outside of reality. This captures the reality of Tai Ji Men predicament and the reason we can't allow our advocacy to be silenced and stymied. Tai Ji Men case spiritual leaders' persecution can be seen from this triadic angle: direct persecution. Dr. Hong, Tai Zaman Ren, like any religious teacher in history, was targeted by Taiwanese government to destroy his ineffable religious experience, that is his unalienable rights and that of his adherents. The second one is attacks on economic sustainability of the adherents. The Tai Ji Men adherents have been vilified and mostly excluded from the network of exchange and productivity in Taiwan, which has caused untold hardship to Tai Ji Men to pursue their happiness. If the UN is serious with enforcing its 17 sustainable goals, the reality facing the UN is that Tai Ji Men has been denied all the SDG goals. Everything about Tai Ji Men case shows parsimonious tendencies the UN exudes in their selective action. Most Tai Ji Men adherent fleeing threats to their lives by the Taiwanese government have their family members threatened and put in harm's way by the despotic government of Taiwan. Where is the global outcry? None. Indirect attack. Tai Ji Men family members have been attacked by the Taiwanese government. People who are affiliated to Tai Ji Men by family, business, or any other association have been targeted and attacked. The UN and the world are silent. When will it end? Allied democratic institution, what is like? Tai Ji Men cause is broken and fractured, and the United States Department of State, United States Commission for International Religious Freedom, and both the Congress and Senate committees on foreign relations lack the will to see and act to end the plight of Tai Ji Men case as opined by Martin Luther King Jr., and I quote, in his 1963 letter from Birmingham jail, that freedom is never given voluntarily by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. You must demand it, for it will not be given freely. This is what confronts all of us today advocating for Tai Ji Men case. How do we make Tai Ji Men case a scorecard? I will cite an example of Open Doors, which is majorly a Christian advocacy organization. In her 2021 report says, over 360 million Christians experience social hostility and religious persecution worldwide. Their report influenced US foreign policy, but the question is simple: where is Tai Ji Men case mentioned? None that I see. Therefore, I think we have to scale up our campaign and advocacy strategy, which means we need to produce a scorecard that will make Tai Ji Men case a point of reference and action in the global arena. My suggestions and conclusion. We should produce 2022 scorecard on Tai Ji Men case and engage institutions and government agencies with it in year 2023 to force government and ancillary institutions to act on our Tai Ji Men case. We must ask US Congress for a hearing on Tai Ji Men case from time to time going forward. I'm yet to see a US Congress caucus on Taiwan that is mentioning our cause, the Tai Ji Men case. We must act and ask now. We must ask friendly radio and TV stations to feature Tai Ji Men brethren from Taiwan and most of advocates living in the United States to relate the plight of the Tai Ji Men, and I remain committed to this cause. For example, we can start with asking USAF, United States Commission for International Religious Freedom. I actually, last 3 weeks, there was a hearing I led concerning Nigeria. And we can actually ask them also for a hearing concerning Tai Ji Men. We can start from there. And I want to lead that. I want to request for that. If this leadership can work with me, we can begin to ask for many hearings so that the religious persecution of teachers, especially like Dr. Ho, must stop. On that note, I'm looking forward to working with us and to continue to amplify the cause, especially of that Tai Ji Men case. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Inada, for strongly advocating, as you often rightly do, for the Tai Ji Men in a world mostly silent on this, and for your call to action to immediate and international action, also with a very few practical suggestions. It's very important, very well done, and I really thank you. It is now my special pleasure to give the floor to Dr. J. Gordon Melton, Distinguished Professor Emeritus of American Religious History at Baylor University, one of the leading world authorities on religious studies. Dr. Melton, the floor is yours.
When we speak of spiritual teachers, we are also including in that number our religious leaders, philosophical innovators, people who offer a broader perspective on our oh, there we go. When we begin to speak about spiritual teachers, I think we are also including in that discussion our religious leaders and our philosophical innovators, those who speak with a broader view of issues to the larger culture, dealing with particular cases and particular trends that tend to affect us all. I would like to take my few moments in this discussion to remind us of some perspectives and background that to this discussion that might be of particular interest. The idea of spiritual and religious liberty is a relatively new one. It has arisen in stages since the 16th century, and most particularly in the 18th century as it began to enter into the discussions of the new governments and the revolutions and that would follow that of the American and French revolutions. That the discussion of religious liberty included a number of rights that were asserted for different parts of the community. This included the right of people to build communities quite apart from state supervision. It's hard to believe that up until a couple of hundred years ago, that a community, for example, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, that wanted to build a religious spiritual establishment and separate itself completely from the discussions of government and the discussions of business, and most particularly the discussions of military, who wanted to assert their rights and the rights of people to peace, and actually forward those rights by not participating and refusing to participate in war. It also included, on the other hand, the right of state governments to carry out its task apart from religious dogma. This was particularly evident in the French case, in which they embodied in the law a separation of church and state that was particularly aimed at getting religion from any part of the government establishment, and has become most extreme in modern day China. It included the assertion of the right of religious leaders to speak prophetic words to government concerns, that is, to speak truth to power. The emblem we have of this is of Nathan, the prophet of ancient Israel, going before the king and saying to the king, "You are the man." And by that, they didn't mean he was the great man, they meant he was the guilty man. And that has been something that spiritual leaders have wanted to do through the ages and has always gotten them into some kind of trouble. The current religious situation worldwide has been exacerbated by the movements of people. As I tell my classes in the American religion, that in the 19th century, Christianity was a minority religion in America. Today, it has a supermajority. But in the 19th century, even as a minority religion, it had no meaningful opposition. It was the only game in town. But today, as Christianity has a supermajority in America, it is divided into 1,000 denominations, and I mean that quite literally. And it has meaningful, large communities of Buddhist and Hindu and Muslim and Taoist and Sikh and Shinto communities, which have quite different agendas. That agenda places those communities in competition for government attention, government funds, and the like, and it places each of those religious communities in some degree of conflict with their religious brothers. Even among Christians today, the divisions are quite deep, and one would think that if any particular Christian community gained access to government power, what it could do in terms of suppressing and its competition. In this kind of situation, we encounter the role of the irreligious in stamping out spirituality under the guise of superstition. This is not a popular thing, particularly in the West, but it occurs everywhere, and this seems to be particularly the case of the Tai Ji Men, that they have been the victims of the irreligious coming down upon their community and feeling the brunt of the irreligious in power, using their power to stamp out superstition. I suspect that the people who persecuted the Tai Ji Men could care less about them particularly, that they could care less if their spirituality soared or died, but they become a victim of the irreligious, choosing targets in the religious community as opportunity supplies. The main right that we need to assert as religious and spiritual people in today's world is the right to be wrong. We need to be able to recognize that religious language is not scientific language, and religious people in articulating the joys and concerns that they have will run into conflicts all the way around. But we as religious people need to honor those who hold opinions different from our own, find the places where we can agree and move forward on that. As we are able to do that, we will be able to certainly reduce the number of those religious and spiritual leaders who feel the brunt of persecution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Melton, for reminding us that religious persecution could be reduced if people will find a way to give different opinions, a way to be expressed, a place to be expressed, where they can be expressed. in mutual respect, even if we profoundly disagree on theological views or whatever. This is so important, really. Thank you so much. Our third panelist for this first part of our today's webinar is Ms. Camellia Marin, Deputy Director of Soteria International in Denmark. Ms. Marin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, distinguished participants, I am very honored to be together with you in this hybrid webinar regarding the spiritual teachers' persecution and the Tai Ji Men case. The subject, persecuting spiritual teachers, is in the same time unbelievable to happen nowadays, but unfortunately is very real. I will start by just pointing out the ongoing case of Tai Ji Men and its leader, Dr. Hong, is one of such terrible examples of persecution. Since its inception in 1966, Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy has never had any tax problem. However, in 1996, it was persecuted during a political purge in the name of a religious crackdown. Prosecutor Hu fabricated witnesses and evidence to falsely accuse Tai Ji Men of fraud and tax evasion. With no proofs of his guilt, Dr. Hong was unjustly kept in a detention center for 159 days by the prosecutor Hu. Prosecutor Hu and those who persecuted Tai Ji Men were politically motivated, but they also wanted to destroy a spiritual community based on moral rules and guided by healthy principles. They did not succeed, and Dr. Hong, after his release, came back to teach his disciples DZ. In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that Tai Ji Men was innocent of all charges and did not owe any taxes, but the situation went on because the National Tax Bureau refused to fully apply the court decision. And afterwards, on 21st of August 2020, in cooperation with the Administrative Enforcement Agency, unlawfully auctioned Tai Ji Men's land. Following his path, Dr. Hong continues to successfully teach about conscious peace, love, and self-cultivation to this very day. However, he and Tai Ji Men continued to be harassed in Taiwan in several ways, particularly through ill-founded tax bills. In order to underline the persecutions that happened to Dr. Hong, I'll just bring one more example, which shows several similarities. And I will briefly mention some details regarding the case of a yoga teacher, Gregorian Bivolaru, and Misa Yoga School from Romania. During time, since the communist regime in Romania till nowadays, in persecuting the yoga teacher Gregorian Bivolaru, Romanian authorities skillfully falsified facts, documents for changing and then disguising all political persecutions into common crimes. Going a little bit in the history of Romania, on 27 August 1982, the National Bureau of the Executive Committee of the National Council emitted Order 1253, by which all yoga and martial arts courses and practices were banned in any public place. The risk of being caught were many years in labor camps or imprisonment in very tough conditions. The trespassers were frequently discredited in the mass media and among their co-workers. This tactic was thoroughly documented by the researchers who studied the communist era in Romania. Despite this situation and not wanting to give it to threat and persecution, Yoga teacher, Mr. Gregorian Bivolaru, continued to clandestinely teach yoga, therefore facing severe consequences. In his view, helping people to achieve better health and quality of life should not be stopped for political reasons. On 18 March 2004, the biggest police raid after the Romanian Revolution of 1989 was executed against 16 houses whose inhabitants were mostly yoga practitioners. The locations were violently attacked by more than 300 special troops, prosecutors, and police officers. The term dangerous sect was deliberately used to describe Misa Yoga School. The media, therefore, supported the brutal police intervention, trying to persuade the public opinion that those raided and searched on March 18 were guilty of crimes. Basically, the mass media was used to turn the population against the yoga practitioners and trigger a witch hunt. The European Court of Human Rights ruled on 26 April 2016 that the operation on 18 March 2004 in Romania violated 3 articles of the Convention of Human Rights and ordered the Romanian state to pay 291,000 euros to the 26 victims that complained about the raids. In its final decision, the court stated that the information provided by the Secret Service to the special police troops indicated that they will be met with heavy armed resistance, usually reserved for drug dealers and organized crime environments. In reality, peaceful yoga practitioners were found at the locations. The violence and disproportionate use of force was a direct result of this misinformation from the state organizations. I ended the quote from the decision of the European Court of Human Rights. Still, the continuation of the persecution of yoga teacher, Mr. Bivolaru, resulted in him leaving the country and seeking political asylum in Sweden. After being kept in prison for almost 8 months in strict isolation at the request of the Romanian authorities, and this fact in itself represents a severe form of torture to be kept in strict isolation, the yoga teacher was granted political asylum, the status of political refugee in Sweden, based on Article 1 of the Geneva Convention of 1951. Still, in February 2016, the French authorities arrested the yoga teacher, Gregorian Bivolaru, in Paris during a book fest. His arrest led to conflictual application of the laws, European arrest warrant versus Geneva Convention, as both were given for the same crime. Not respecting the Article 1 of the Geneva Convention and the mutual recognition between EU member states, European Union member states, France extradited Mr. Bivolaru to Romania in June 2016. All the above mentioned has resulted in the jailing of Gregorian Bivolaru again for many months. There are other cases. I will just mention the name of Ananda community in Italy and Swami Kriyananda. I will not present it now, but the authorities in Italy made similar steps in fabricating evidences and arrest warrants. Some of these odd similarities in different cases for different spiritual teachers, I can resume them like this. The methods used for the persecution in different times and countries have only adapted to the social landscape, but are fundamentally the same. Manipulation of social environment, using the police and secret service or National Taxation Bureau in the case of Tai Ji Men for jobs that are politically motivated, suppressing all opposing opinions or facts, blocking or diminishing the free expression of opinions, falsifying facts, documents, changing all political persecution into common crimes, using violent methods of persuasion. The main target becomes the person, the spiritual leader, and the group that is different from the mainstream. Referring again to Tai Ji Men community, we can say that the distortion of the reality is the most obvious when we compare the image presented on Tai Ji Men by the National Taxation Bureau and mass media in Taiwan with the profile of Tai Ji Men that comes from scholars who have investigated it. However, all the academic studies on Tai Ji Men indicate a completely different image. The difference, again, underlined the intentional attempt to distort and manipulate the image of Tai Ji Men in the public eye in order to justify the extreme measures that have been taken and which in reality represent a continuation of the persecutions. How is it possible that the academic approach contrasts so much to the image imposed by the media regarding Tai Ji Men case? Are the Taiwanese authorities not supposed to be the best informed about their citizens and to respect their rights, to apply the court decision that was given in the Tai Ji Men case? We kindly address to Taiwanese authorities to do their mandate and to apply and protect their citizens in the case of Tai Ji Men spiritual community. And also to be attentive to the fact that such similarities in different countries regarding the persecution of the spiritual teachers shows much more, shows that actually it is a kind of agreement of not allowing spiritual communities to develop as well as they can do it and to suppress the peaceful way of looking to life, the developing of consciousness and the inner nature. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Marin, for recalling the very nature of the Tai Ji Men case and for showing how much it is based on, again, falsity after falsity, which at the end of the day deny the fundamental right of a human community to religious freedom, which again is the standpoint of a virtuous society. It is my pleasure now to give the mic, pass the mic to Mr. Willy Fautré. He is the director and co-founder of Human Rights Without Frontiers. He will lead the second session of our webinar today, and this is the right moment for me to thank the co-organizer of this important series of webinars, which are CHESNUR, Center for Studies on New Religion, and of course, Human Rights Without Frontiers. Mr. Fautré, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marco, for these kind words of introduction. And as usual, so during this session, the microphone or the floor will be given to the Dizzy. But first, there will be a video. But first, I will introduce that day, World Teachers' Day, which has been held annually since 1994 on the 5th of October to celebrate all teachers around the globe. And the theme for World Teachers' Day this year is the transformation of education begins with teachers. This day commemorates the anniversary of the adoption of the recommendation by the UNESCO concerning the status of teachers in 1966, which sets benchmarks regarding the rights and responsibilities of teachers and standards for their initial preparation and further education, recruitment, employment, as well as teaching and learning conditions. And this recommendation was completed in 1997 by another one concerning the status of higher education teaching personnel. World Teachers' Day is co-convened in partnership with the International Labour Organization, also known under its acronym ILO, UNICEF, which is also well known, and Education International. World Teachers' Day this year celebrates the critical role of teachers in transforming learners' potential by ensuring they have the tools they need to take responsibility for themselves, for others, and for the planet. That's why it is important for UN member states to ensure that teachers are trusted and recognized as knowledge producers, reflective practitioners, and policy partners. The 3-day celebration at the UNESCO headquarters includes the awarding ceremony of the UNESCO Hamdan Prize for Teacher Development and a series of events showcasing how guaranteeing teachers decent working conditions, access to professional development opportunities, and a recognized professional status is a first step towards more resilient education systems. Personally, as a retired teacher, I can only stress the importance of such a day as teachers around the world build the future of their nations. But they are also the first observers of changes brought by new generations of young people. Teaching means sharing knowledge, sharing experience, and sharing moral values. But teaching also means for teachers receiving from their learners. And as I already said in the previous webinar, it is through a series of discussions with a former student that the 80s that I was at that time became a Christian and a defender of religious freedom for all. So teaching is going in both directions, from the teacher to the students, but also from the students to the teachers, and we should not forget that. And I think now that we can show the video that was planned in the program before I will ask the first Dizzy to take the floor.
誰もが幸せになるよう世界の平和を願います。自分でできることを行いましょう。世界を変える大きな大きな力になることを信じます。
天地の資源に感謝をし、私欲をやめ、人類が地球上すべての生命を守るための救世主となることを願います。Endless Heart!
İnsanlık alemi zor günler yaşamakta. Savaşlar, istemsiz göçler, iklimin bize acımasızlığı ve bütün bunların karşısında yarınlarımızın güzel olması için dua edelim. Bilelim ki temiz kalple, bilelim ki iyi niyetle yapılmış dualar yarınlarımızın teminatı olacaktır. Güzelliklerimiz için, istikrar için, barış için, refahı birlikte bölüşmek için ve bizden sonrakilere daha güzel bir gezegen bırakabilmemiz için dua edelim. Dualarımızın iyiliklerle, güzelliklerle, hayırlara ulaşması temennisiyle amin diyorum. Amin.
من دعا می کنم که همه مردم دنیا از نعمت صلح برخوردار باشند و به یکدیگر عشق بورزند.
A German saying tells us that when around us it is dark, there are two things we can do, either cursing the darkness or lighting a match. Cursing the darkness is not very useful. Lighting a single match does not dispel the darkness either. But if thousands of men and women light their matches, in the end the darkness will disappear and the fear of the darkness will also dissolve. Through the global prayer of love and peace and the 1 minute silence, we will proclaim that we are not afraid of the darkness. If anything, it is the darkness that should be afraid of us.
Excellent video that I've just discovered, and I'm sure that everybody enjoyed it. Now I will give the floor to the first Dizzy, whose name is Kelly Wu, a purchasing specialist.
Hello, everyone. I joined Tai Ji Men in 2019. My sister is also a Tai Ji Men Dizi, and she had invited me to a few Tai Ji Men events before I joined. One of the events I went to was LA Tai Ji Men's anniversary. As I walked in, brothers and sisters smiled at me. When I look at their smiles, I was wondering why their smiles were so bright and energetic. It was also my first time seeing the bell ringing for peace. Tai Ji Men is like a ship which takes us to a better place. Our conscience is the compass to lead our direction. Shifu is the captain who guides us when we should speed up or to use the anchor to slow down, and how to use the compass to find the direction. Practicing Qigong with brothers and sisters every weekend is just like going to the gas station where I can get fuel to move on for the following week. The wisdom I've learned in Tai Ji Men helps me to calibrate my compass to make sure my behaviors and thoughts in my daily life are on the right track. Besides Qigong, which has improved my health a lot, a very important thing I've learned in Tai Ji Men is to think positively and view things in different aspects. For the whole world, our conscience is still the only compass that people from different countries, ethnicities, ages, and genders use for directions. The laws in different countries are the maps which show us the general locations, but we still need the compass to point out the exact location of where we should go. And the governments are the ones who created the maps for their citizens. If even the governments do not obey the laws, the world will be chaotic. In fact, the abuse of taxation has become a weapon used by democratic governments to discriminate against religious and spiritual minorities. Many non-governmental organizations have begun to pay attention to the violation of human rights in a similarly legitimate way. For example, Eric Roux, the chairman of the European Interreligious Forum for Religious Freedom, made incisive comments on the Tai Ji Men injustice. When a so-called democratic country starts to go off track, when injustice occurs in a place that is supposed to be one of the good places in the world, the impact may be worse than when it occurs in a totalitarian country because it lowers the democratic standards for the entire world. While Tai Ji Men's unjust tax case remains unresolved after 26 years, Shifu has been taking deeds to the world to promote conscience, love, and peace. With the unresolved unjust tax case during pandemic, with the uncertain global situation, Shifu's each step shows deeds, no matter what kind of obstacles are there, if we follow our own conscience, it will lead us in the right direction and eventually find the way to conquer the difficulties. Tai Ji Men's unjust tax case is not only a tax case. It is a signal showing that our government is violating the laws it created. It is a signal showing that our government has deviated from the map it created. And now it's time for everyone to help the government to calibrate its compass. I sincerely hope that Taiwanese government can resolve the false Tai Ji Men case, revoke the illegal tax bill, and conduct the execution as soon as possible. I was so touched when I heard the bell ringing for the first time at our anniversary a few years ago. Although I was an outsider at that time, I already felt the strength and energy Tai Ji Men brought to the world through the bell ringing. After knowing what Shifu and Tai Ji Men have been through, the 26-year injustice, I admire Shifu and brothers and sisters for what they have been dedicated to this world, even though the unjust case is still not resolved today. I am proud to be one of Tai Ji Men Dizi and have the opportunity to follow Shifu and brothers and sisters in doing things that benefit this world. Today, we celebrate the 22nd anniversary for Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy in Los Angeles. Happy birthday to Tai Ji Men. I sincerely hope that Tai Ji Men's false case can be resolved before our next anniversary. The day our false case is resolved is the day that Taiwanese government calibrated its compass and could sail in the right direction. After the case is resolved, Shifu and Dizi will be able to spend more time and effort in promoting conscience, love, and peace to help more people in the world. Thank you, Shifu. Thank you, Tai Ji Men.
And thank you, Kelly, for sharing your thoughts with us. Tai Ji Men is like a ship which takes you all to a better place, you said. And your conscience is the compass which leads your direction. Your Shifu is indeed your spiritual teacher and the captain of the boat, the ship, who guides you when you should use the anchor to slow or to stop the ship, and how to use the compass to find the exact direction in your life. Thank you very much for your contribution to this webinar. And now I will give the floor to Jason Liu, Director of Engineering, Bay Area. Yeah. Floor is yours.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Willie, for the introduction. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jason. I live in San Jose, North Carolina. I work as a Director of Engineering in IC9 company. I'm glad to be here today with you to honor World Teachers Day. Being a teacher is a career I aspire to. And my first job after graduating from a school was serve as a teacher in high school. However, I found that it's not easy to be a good teacher. Working hour is from early morning, 6:30 to the evening, 9 o'clock. In order to teach children well, I also call meetings with parents. At that time, I have been Tai Ji Men Dizi, even though the teaching is very hard, and I still want to be like Sifu, learn from Sifu's love for the world, pass down the love to the students, and hope they can learn their talents and contribute to the society. Unfortunately, in December 1996, the Tai Ji Men unjust case occurred. Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren took over major media page overnight. TV news headlines and newspaper front pages report that Tai Ji Men was suspected of fraud and racism governing. After the accident, the school teachers saw me. They want to ask me, but they couldn't. A student asked me, "Teacher, you guys from Tai Ji Men racing, blah, blah, blah." Then he looked me in the eyes, hesitated, but stopped asking. There are others who have doubts about me. Being suspected and wronged is the most heartbreaking thing. My entire world has collapsed. That winter was the coldest winter in my life. One day when I visited my parents' house, my father was watching TV. The news is about Tai Ji Men case. I was nervous and silent, hoping he didn't see it. On TV, the Cai Changbin, the president of the Tai Ji Men case, Self-Rescue Association, fabricated the story and said, in Tai Ji Men, a head cost 50,000 yen, and a flag cost 30,000 yen. My dad immediately looked at me fiercely and said, with such high education, how could you be cheated by such a group? I was very angry and replied, if what TV say is true, he, Cai Changbin, could kick my head like a soccer ball. That's because of the fabricate case. Even if my family and the friends want to find a place to practice self-cultivation, it would be difficult for them to come to Tai Ji Men. Since doubt is like an invisible barrier that prevents people from moving forward. That is the biggest sadness in my life. Finding a great Sifu in life is inherently difficult. Someone once asked an old martial arts master if he wants to accept disciple. He said he was only willing to teach students and would not accept disciples. Because teaching students is much easier. Students call you a teacher. The teacher teach specific content. And when the time comes, the relationship ends. Being a Sifu is different. You are both a teacher and a father. The so-called Sifu for a day is a father for a lifetime. A disciple must have a sincere intention in order to be a disciple. Sifu accept a disciple because of a predestined relationship. If it's not for the karma, we are strangers. Then who wants to be your Sifu and establish a lifelong mentoring relationship with you? What's more, Sifu's morality is highly respected, and some of his deeds are prominent figures today, including several generals in the army. If it wasn't for his compassion, selflessness, the equality for being, and the wide opening of the door, how can I have a chance to be his deeds? This year, from June to September, under the leadership of Sifu, that the Tai Ji Men Cultural Goodwill Group and the Full Power have invited a total of 46 world-class leaders to ring the bell of world peace and love. From Europe, Sweden, Turkey, Canada, the United Kingdom, California, Washington, D.C., and New York. Sifu has been working non-stop for 4 months. The topics he cares, including global environmental issue, international economic issue, human rights issue, religious freedom issue, education issue, and so on. His love for the world has been practiced step by step with his actions. I am fortunate to participate in a variety of activities beside him. What I saw is that the more experienced and senior leaders in the various fields, the more they cherish Sifu. When they saw the roadmap of the Bell of the World Peace and Love, they were amazed at how Sifu did it. Every photo has a story. And when gathered, it's a pure and huge energy of love. Once in New York, Sifu received an invitation from the former president of the Dominican Republic, His Excellency Fernandez, to participate in a global forum, Latin American and the Caribbean. The attendance has already been arranged, and the dedicated staff will guide Sifu and the team to enter the venue. At the same time, they also told me that the place for the meeting between His Excellency and Dr. Hong had already been settled. President Fernando's hair was white and his face was withered. However, at the moment he saw Sifu, a peaceful smile appeared. The two clasped hands as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. And he said with his eyes, "How are you?" It had been 17 years since Sifu and His Excellency met for the first time. They were strangers who never knew each other, and now they are good friends who cherish each other. I saw true love in Sifu. That kind of love can warm others and also can warm ourselves. Sifu presents His Excellency with the Lifetime Achievement Award in recognition of His Excellency's actions to fulfill the wish when the bell rings. I wish that the people from over the world can understand each other and that love and peace can prevail. In 2008, he helped the presidents of Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela in shaking hands and making peace, so resolving a war crisis in Latin America. The love that has been practiced is equal love. Whether it is Your Excellency President or ordinary NGO volunteers, everyone is inspired. Gloria, a 95 years old senior from UN NGO, at the dinner she hosts, she reserved the seat next to her exclusively for Sifu. During the banquet, Sifu was introduced to those people Gloria thought was important. Later, she invited Sifu to visit her house. Gloria said, she knows what Sifu is doing is very important for the world. Dr. Hong is a very important person. She wants us to protect Sifu well. Sifu told me that there were many cultivators in the world, that many of them have worked very hard to love the world. I think it's also because they work hard for a lifetime, such that they can quickly see what Sifu has done, quickly get close to Sifu, and then understand Sifu's greatness and cherish Sifu. The role of teacher is to preach, teach, and solve doubts. That's a saying said that there are three difficulties in a life. One of them is it's difficult to find a Sifu. Fortunately, I have found my Sifu in this life. A spiritual leader, my Sifu, is protected and cherished by foreigners as a treasure. But the Taiwan government has persecuted my Sifu and the Tai Ji Men for 26 years. What's even worse is that the land that Sifu prepared for a Tai Ji Men center was illegally auctioned off. I still hope that Taiwanese government will wake up its conscience and correct its mistakes as soon as possible. On the World Teachers' Day, education is everywhere, and teachers are not only confined to classrooms. What the government has done is also a role model for all students to follow. I sincerely hope that our positive actions will help the Taiwanese government to know the real Tai Ji Men. Then the government should reflect its own past, truly revoke the false case, return the land to Tai Ji Men, really get rid of bad officials, and give Taiwan a country of justice, integrity, and the rule of law, where the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A country with real democracy. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you, Jason. You said that it is difficult to find the Shifu, but fortunately, you have found yours in this life. Dr. Hong is both a teacher and a father. Not a father for one day, you said, but for a lifetime. And you also said you would like to be a spiritual teacher like him, to learn from his love for the world, to pass on this love to students, hoping that they can learn and contribute to the well-being of society. It is indeed a big challenge, as you stressed it, to be a good teacher. And I wish that you can fulfill your dream very soon. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Jeff Kuo, who is a business development manager. The floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Jeff. As Woody has introduced, I'm a business development manager of a small company in Northern California. It is a great pleasure for me to speak at this webinar about my thoughts and my experience with the Tai Ji Men case. I've lived in California for 30 years, and I started practicing Qigong and Tai Ji Men since 2005. The insomnia and gout problems that had bothered me for years improved a lot soon after I started practicing Qigong and Tai Ji Men. In addition, the emotional problems brought about by work stress also improved significantly. Practicing Qigong and Tai Ji Men is a holistic approach, not only for one's physical and mental health, but also for the physical, mental, and spiritual health of the world. Our Shifu, Dr. Hong, taught his disciples or 弟子 to understand themselves, to distinguish between truth and falsehood in the world, and to understand the relationship between people, nature, and the world. It was only after I started practicing at Tai Ji Men that I began to hear about the Tai Ji Men case. I slowly learned about the circumstance of the case. I was surprised to find that the government officials in Taiwan protect each other, and the administrative court does not uphold justice for people. Instead, the court often sides with the government agencies, as if the officials are united to bully the people. There's little the people can do about it. They are losing their confidence in the executive branch and the judiciary branches. Later, we found that there are many other taxation victims. The tax agencies are indifferent and the courts are inept. The people are caught in a bind they can never get out of. Many people's lives have been ruined this way. I began to contemplate the issues behind human nature and realize that this is the arrogance and lack of empathy of people with power. Those with power would rather do as little as possible to avoid mistakes, collect their salaries, and cruise toward their retirement. Most are indifferent to people's suffering because they don't feel the pain. Some that do care feel powerless to challenge the status quo. The tax authorities always have the utmost power. The systems would never change, and the people would always suffer. It looks like the president, neither the president nor the people can do anything about the tax authorities. Since 1996 to 2022, the Tai Ji Men case has lasted for 26 years. 26 years is almost 1/3 of a person's life. People's lives are limited, yet government agency would always be around. Whether one chooses to compromise or not to resist, an average person lacks the ability to grapple with the executive branch and judiciary branch of a state for 26 years. Although the executive branch knows there's some issues with tax code and that it has the opportunity to do the right thing, however, they choose to follow the status quo and did not do the right thing. Although the judiciary branches knows that there is a problem with the case, it did not dare to make the right judicial decision. Nonfeasance that causes imbalance and impotence. That is a crisis of the state. The government exists because people have entrusted it with their affairs. But when government officials ignore this mandate, does not take their business seriously, and are only concerned with their own benefits, this is a systematic problem. The officials have been accustomed to following the rules and procedures for many years. If it were not for the Tai Ji Men case, people would still believe, or I still believe, that Taiwan is a democratic country with the rule of law. This test case reveals the issues of unsupervised authority. When one authority violates people's rights, there appears to be no other authority to check and balance it. The power of the people is limited, and authorities use various administrative means to delay and evade from its duty. The fact that the people are being violated will not have come to light. In Tai Ji Men's case, the highest court has rendered its not guilty, no tax owed verdict. The tax authority only need to revoke the illegal tax bills according to the Administrative Procedure Code, Article 117. It could end the persecution against Tai Ji Men, yet it chose not to act. It chose to do nothing and allow one illegality to repeat and even propagate, furthering the laceration on democracy and rule of law. This is not a problem of a few officials, but of the majority of officials and even the entire system. This is a fundamental issue. People must awaken in order to make things right. This endeavor of changing the system cannot be achieved without the majority of people's support and awareness. This helped me understand that Tai Ji Men's resolution to promote the movement of an era of conscience. The Tai Ji Men case is a result of the degradation of the entire bureaucracy. It is not a matter of one person or 10 people or 100 people. I admire Tai Ji Men's wisdom. I admire the Shifu's wisdom in promoting the movement of an era of conscience in Taiwan and around the world. In retrospect, Tai Ji Men Shifu was guiding Dizi toward the right direction. Shifu chose not to compromise, and this is a difficult and time-consuming task. The path the Shifu leads us on is a long and an arduous one. And it is not just about the fighting for Tai Ji Men. Shifu's mission is to protect all Taiwanese people from its government's abuse of power. I also hope that this movement will influence all government officials such that Taiwan's taxation and judicial system can improve, and people will no longer suffer from such injustice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And it was very interesting to hear about the way your spiritual teacher, Dr. Hong, has enriched your life, as he did with thousands of other dizzy. For years, indeed, Dr. Hong has really given a new life to a new generation and perpetuated human moral values that are so important for a healthy future of Taiwan. And now I will give the floor to Tiffany Chou, engineer in semiconductor industries. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Willie. Panelist.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Willie, panelist, distinguished guests, and audience in today's webinar. It is my honor for me to participate in today's World Teachers' Day webinar. I wish all teachers good health and happiness. I grew up in a traditional Taiwanese family with folk customs. My mother was an elementary school teacher. She was good at teaching me how to study when I was young, but she could not answer my question about the meaning of life. My life was comfortable before the age of 20. I studied at a top university, and my future appeared bright. However, I was always fearful and anxious from the bottom of my heart. In 1993, when I was 21 years old, my mother introduced me to Dr. Hong Daozi, my spiritual teacher, and John Marin of Tai Ji Men, to learn practicing Qigong, cultivating my mind, learning yin and yang philosophy, and understanding myself. Most importantly, I discovered that the value of life is self-cultivation and helping others in order to return to my spiritual home. Following that, I became more optimistic and my life became more colorful and interesting. Work challenge, in my opinion, are regarded as self-cultivation for capacity enhancement. Difficulty in my life are regarded as nourishment and able to help others. I also realized that all humans are one community. So I tried to make time to join Dr. Hong in spreading love and peace with conscience throughout the world. During the 11th International Conference of Chief Justice and 2010 Global Symposium on Awakening Planetary Consciousness in 2010, I witnessed Dalai Lama, a well-known spiritual teacher, and 1989 Nobel Peace laureates rang the bell of peace and love and prayed for Tibet, India, all creatures in the universe. Last September, over 100 people from 27 countries, including myself, attended the 2022 World Summit of Love and Peace and the ceremony of ringing the bell of peace and love in New York, where people gathering goodwill and inspire global citizens to take conscience-driven actions to improve the world's well-being. The theme of the day was acting with conscience is the key to consolidation and sustainable development transformation. And it includes cultural exchanges, a ceremony of ringing the bell of peace, and dialogue between leaders. In his capacity as president of World Conference of Mayors, Mr. Johnny Ford declared September 23, 2022 to be Dr. Hong's night. On behalf of the Mayor, New York City, Mr. Johnny Ford and Harriman Global Rotary, Robert Richard, founder and executive director of Empowerment, presented Dr. Hong with citation from New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Dr. Hong received a Global Humanitarian Leadership Award from the Foundation of Drug-Free World American Chapter and Kojak International at the summit in recognition of his global advocacy for love and peace. Mr. Robert Richard, most impressively exclaimed to Dr. Hong, "I am chairman of the United Nations, United Churches, fighting for your rights. 20,000 churches. We wish to join you. We love you." Dr. Hong is not only my shifu and spiritual teacher, but also the spiritual mentor who inspires many leaders with conscience to act in love and peace. Dr. Hong is recognized around the world for leading his deeds to accomplish the impossible, such as visiting 101 countries at their own expense and increasing Taiwan's visibility. However, over the past 26 years, Taiwanese government has failed to respect and protect Tai Ji Men, who has been prosecuted by law and taxation. This is complete absurd. Taiwanese government launched a religious anti-criminal campaign in 1996, prosecuting Tai Ji Men in both criminal persecution and taxation. In 2002, the Control Yuan investigated Hou Kuanren's 8 major violations of law in handling Tai Ji Men case and requested Ministry of Justice to take disciplinary action against the prosecutor and regard the case as a major human rights protection. In 2007, the Supreme Court found the defendants innocent and all charges and found no taxation evasion or violation of Tax Collection Act. The Control Yuan investigated the NTB's handling of Tai Ji Men case in 2009 and found 7 major violations of law. At the same year, the innocent defendants who were detained or received national compensation for illegal detention. The national compensation proves that this case was wrong and illegal and it initiated. It has been 15 years since the defendants were found innocent by the Supreme Court. However, the NTB did not revoke its illegal tax bill issued in 1997, but instead, in 2020, collaborated with the Administrative Enforcement Agency to illegal action and nationalize Tai Ji Men's real estate, which was intended for the construction of a self-cultivation center. My mother taught elementary school. Many Taiwanese were illiterate or undereducated when she began her career at a young age. To make ends meet, parents frequently did not allow their children to attend school. My mother paid visits to students' home in the countryside and spoke with their parents, hoping that children could be educated and change their fate. Such an enthusiastic and passionate teacher who suffered from knee degeneration as she aged, recovered quickly after she began to practice Tai Ji Men Qigong, and she was overjoyed to share her improvements with her colleagues. After Tai Ji Men case in 1996, government officials came to her school and requested her to stop Tai Ji Men Qigong. After dozens of her colleagues were too afraid to practice under her high pressure, my mother became the only one practicing Tai Ji Men in a short period of time. My mother was so dissatisfied that she retired in 1997. What happened to my mother almost happened to every Tai Ji Men deeds during that difficult period. State violence was the catalyst for violation of our rights to work and to life, as well as our freedom of religion and belief. The taxation evasion questions, the tax status questions are used to put entire legitimacy and the religion into full view and undermine the status of community to present groups as a criminal, said Dr. Holly Folk, association professor at College Humanities and Social Science, Western Washington University, teaching comparative religion and researching new religious movement. I see Tai Ji Men case as very, very isomorphic to other religious communities they face harassment. Her research led me to realize the problems we face in Tai Ji Men case are similar to those faced by religious groups throughout history, where different bureaucracies persecuted them. An old Chinese proverb states that that it's better to disturb thousands of rivers than to disturb a practitioner. In the mundane world, it is God's blessing to find a spiritual teacher, understand the meaning of life, persuade eternal value, and complete humanity's mission. My spiritual home is Tai Ji Men. Dr. Hong is the spiritual teacher to tens of thousands of Tai Ji Men deeds all around the world, helping us to be healthy, happy, and exceptional. Dr. Hong, as a spiritual leader of love and peace, has inspired many world leaders to follow their conscience and do the good. The persecution of Tai Ji Men by Taiwan bureaucracies and the violation of our human rights to freedom of belief have not slowed our spread of love and peace. The climb of the last 25 years has strengthened our bonds and made us more steadfast in our belief in the faith and truth of martial arts practitioners. We are reforming long-lasting legal and tax problems in Taiwan by resolving the fabricated Tai Ji Men case, protecting human rights, safeguarding human dignity, and establish Taiwan as peaceful, prosperous, and a sustainable island. That's my sharing. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. You said your mother was an elementary school teacher, and she was a very good and dedicated teacher. And she was teaching many Taiwanese who were illiterate or under or not educated. She was visiting poor families to convince them that if they could be if their children could be educated, this would change their destiny. However, your own mother could not answer your questions about the meaning of life. That happens quite often, in families. But everything changed when she introduced you to Dr. Hong, who taught you how to cultivate your mind, to learn yin and yang philosophy, and understand yourself. It is thanks to Dr. Hong that you finally found the value of life in self-cultivation and by helping others. And afterwards, you became optimistic and your life became colorful and interesting. And that's again one more testimony of the positive contribution of the teachings of Dr. Hong to most of his disease. And now I will introduce the last speaker, Annie Cheng from AVP Bank in the UK.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. This is Annie from London. First of all, echo the World Teachers' Day on 5th October. I would like to express my gratitude and sincere regard to all the teachers around the world. When we talk about teachers, we also talk about education. Teachers are key to education. In addition to the content and materials, the way a teacher teaches is very important to the effectiveness of learning. The knowledge of a student obtains could vary depending on how the teacher guides and teaches. Teacher is not only referring to those teachers or tutors in school or education institution. Confucius say, if three work together, one can be my teacher, which means we can learn from the others, not necessarily in a classroom. In our current diversified and dynamic society, there are more and more different types of school and education institutions, such as music school, language school, etc. Since the first day I stepped into the primary school, I have been through many schools, all the way to postgraduate. Of course, I have learned a lot in the journey. However, I found the skill and knowledge I learned did not help me to become more confident, more compassionate, or more considerate. Those pretty certificates did not prevent me from being shy and afraid to talk to the others. The situation started to change since I joined Tai Ji Men. Our Shifu, Dr. Ho, taught me hard Kung Fu. He got me to understand that all changes start from heart. When I'm willing to face my true nature, I will be able to figure out the way. For example, I admire those people who can talk confidently in public. When I try to mimic their style, I just get messed up. The harder I try, the bigger the mess, because I was forcing myself to do something against my nature. On realizing that, I changed my way and started to develop the way I'm comfortable and no need to pretend to be someone else. The learning in Tai Ji Men is unique. Tai Ji Men is an ancient empire of Qigong, martial art, and self-cultivation. Our Shifu, Dr. Hong, teaches us the philosophy and wisdom of life, guide us to cultivate moral character and purify heart when strengthening physical, mental, and spiritual health. Through a tradition of Shifu and deeds, Tai Ji Men has inherited the wisdom of historic Taoism and preserved the essence of Chinese culture. Dr. Hong has led us to travel across the world to spread the beauty of Chinese culture and the message of love, peace, and conscience. Up to date, we have visited more than 300 cities in 101 countries. Everyone met, including many heads of state and government officials, all praise and admire Shifu's dedication. They believe what we are doing brings the most needed possible energy to the world. However, such a renowned cultural group, highly recognized and admired domestically and internationally, has been oppressed in Taiwan for 26 years. Since the politically motivated crackdown in 1996, Tai Ji Men became a victim of unfair persecution and illegal taxation for 26 years. Prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren led a big team of armed forces to raid Tai Ji Men Academy when there was no evidence of criminal activity. This role are disproportionate, and obviously Hou had the intention of bullying and intimidation. Several days was taken into custody and suffered psychological abuse when Prosecutor Hou threatened them with the life and the safety of their family to give untrue statement about Tai Ji Men and Dr. Hou. Unable to find any criminal evidence, Hou summoned tax officer Shi Yuesheng to give a false statement and framed Tai Ji Men of tax evasion. After 10 years of lengthy criminal litigation, the Supreme Court in 2007 ruled that Tai Ji Men is not guilty, no fraud, no tax evasion, and no violation of the tax collection code, and the monetary gift we give to Shifu was non-taxable gift. However, the tax abuse did not stop. The tax authority refused to follow the court ruling to withdraw those illegal tax invoices. According to Article 177 of the Administrative Litigation Act, the Administrative Court should have put on hold the litigation proceeding and should wait for the decision of the nature of the income by the Criminal Court, which has a higher standard of investigation and the admissibility of evidence, when adjudication the case of income tax for 1991 to 1996. However, the Administrative High Court went on to render its ruling in 2005 before the final decision on the nature of the income was made by the Criminal Court on July 13, 2007. It revoked the tax bill for 1991, 1993 to 1996, but sustained the income tax case for 1992. This irrational and inconsistent decision on 1992 tax case has led to the unlawful enforcement, auction, and confiscation of the sacred land intended for a cultivation center of Tai Ji Men. Despite the tax invoice was a contract from thin air, the tax authority concealed evidence and forged official documents, and the Taipei Administration High Court asked the National Taxation Bureau and the Central District and the enforcement agent to stop enforcement. The National Taxation Bureau and the enforcement agent nevertheless collided to illegally auction off the land, which was taken into state ownership subsequently. The theme for the World Teachers' Day this year is Transformation of Education begins with teachers. Again, remind us of the importance of teachers. Teachers are key to education and learning. In order to improve the education quality, every government has been working hard to enhance the working environment and the benefit for teachers. A teacher like the Zhang Menren, the Grandmaster of Tai Ji Men, Dr. Ho, should be respected and honored for his contribution and dedication to the preservation of culture and the education on physical strength and mental health. The way the government agent in Taiwan deal with the Tai Ji Men case provide exactly an opposite example. Those rogue bureaucrats, for their personal benefit and bonus, not only ignore the court ruling, but also violate the due process and the law to enforce the seizure, auction, and confiscation. Even worse, none of the rogue officer or prosecutor has been punished. Injustice for one is injustice for all. To fight for injustice, we have to gather momentum and support domestically and internationally. Tai Ji Men case has been presented to the United Nations Human Rights Council several times. In 2010, the Association of World Citizens submitted a 1503 procedure to the Human Rights Council. Another ECOSCO accredited non-government organization, Coordination of Association and Individual for Freedom of Conscience, filed 5 written statements in 2021 and 2022 to the Human Rights Council to explain Tai Ji Men case and highlight the seizure of real estate as a weapon to discriminate religious and spiritual minority, as well as the factor of some rogue bureaucrats. Here again, we would like to call the government to fulfill its responsibility of a decent administrator, so as to set up an example of good civil education of the rule of law. The government of Taiwan should take action with courage and determination to admit their mistake, to rectify the previous wrongdoing, to punish those corrupt officers, and to return the land to Tai Ji Men. It is the government's responsibility to uphold and safeguard its citizens' human rights. We have been waiting too long. The government should take action without further delay. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and thank you, Annie, for insisting about the necessary professionalism and effectiveness of teachers. And you also said that the skills and knowledge you learned at school, in the school framework, did not help you to overcome the weak points of your personality, but that the teachings of Dr. Hong did help you a lot. Interesting as well is your quotation from Confucius, who said, if 3 people walk together, one can be my teacher, which means that we must be modest as teachers, and we can always learn from the others, not necessarily in the classroom. Thank you very much to all the Dizzy who took the floor this afternoon, or this evening, or this morning, depending on where we all are. And I will now pass the microphone, if I can say it that way, to the person who will wrap up. It will be Dr. Massimo Introvigli.
Thank you. I don't have my normal voice thanks to the weather in New York and the air conditioning in California. But I hope you will understand me thanks to the microphone. We heard from Camellia that one particular teacher was arrested in France. And Willie surely has written a lot about the situation in France, where spiritual teachers regarded as cult leaders or chef de sect are often find themselves in a difficult situation. Now, in France and perhaps in Belgium, the leader of groups stigmatized as cults are often called guru or gurus. And to quote a famous French thinker, Inspector Clouseau, for those who have seen the movies of the Pink Panther, there is only one thing that doesn't work in this use of the word guru. It's stupid. Because guru is used in a cavalier way in many cases which are far away from the original meaning, referring to a teacher in Hinduism or by extension in other Indian tradition, but particularly because the word guru in India is a very honorable word. According to one of the possible etymologies, guru comes from gu, meaning ignorance, and ru, to dispel. So the guru is the person helping to dispel the ignorance of the devotees. Also, and the etymologies are not really in conflict, are more complementary. Guru comes from the Sanskrit roots giri, which means one who calls, and nobody can self-appoint himself or herself as a guru. So a guru is called by somebody and in turn calls others to enlightenment. Guru in common Indian parlance also means one who has weight, even in the sense of being fat. And that's one of the reasons why Buddha is often represented as a fat man. But also there is a popular legend in India that even if you put a slim guru on a scale, you will be surprised that his weight is enormous and nothing to do with his, sometimes her, but female guru exist, but there are less, nothing to do with the real weight. Already in the most ancient text of the Hindu religious tradition, the Vedas, you find reference to the gurus, but in the late Vedas, the Upanishads, and in subsequent text, this meaning of guru as essential teacher for enlightenment becomes prominent. In the Vishnu Smriti, an old text, it is said that we have three parents, the father, the mother, and the guru. And by honoring the father, we understand the earthly world. By honoring the mother, we understand the word of the gods. But to understand the ultimate principle of reality, we should serve the guru. And this service in the Indian tradition as a material component before the guru start teaching. You are supposed to work for him, to serve him, even to give money to him for some years. And the guru will be normally reluctant to teach you. There is a recent important book by our colleague Julian Strube. The book just came out. It's called Global Tantra. And it's about Madame Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society, and the other early theosophists' relation with Tantrism. When they arrived in India, Madame Blavatsky and her friends believed Tantrism was worthless. And that's because they had read some books about the Tantra. But when they really went to Bengal, they understood Tantra was totally different, and it was explained to them by Indian members that you cannot learn the Tantra from books. You need a guru, and many gurus will never commit their secret teachings in writing. Now, the guru is described in terms we may even regard as extreme in the sacred texts of Hinduism. In the Narada Purana, for instance, we read that once we have submitted to a guru, it doesn't make sense to say that the guru's teachings are not true, because there is no truth, and I quote, higher than the guru. And one of the greatest Hindu philosophers in the 17th century, Ramdas, wrote in his masterpiece, the Dashboda, that he who regards God as superior to the guru is a fool. Before the greatness of the guru, even the greatness of God counts as nothing. Surely we may say these are peculiarities of the Hindu tradition and may seem those exaggerations. However, there are parallels about spiritual authority also in the Christian tradition. For instance, in the spiritual exercises by Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Catholic order of the Jesuits, of which the present Pope, Pope Francis, is a member, we read the famous sentence that, quote, "The white that I see, I will believe to be black if my master tells me it's black." And he means the Jesuit authorities or the authorities of the Catholic Church. Now, when we say this, we should discuss the question of possible abuse. It's clear that the authority of the guru is open to abuse, as is the authority of a politician or a tax bureaucrat, to quote the Tai Ji Men case. And charges of abuse should be evaluated within the context of what the guru is. Certainly, gurus who kill or rape their followers may not hide under pretext of religious freedom. On the other hand, being a guru or establishing with disciples a special relationships of obedience is not a crime. And the relation between the guru and disciple should not be evaluated through our individualist and rationalist standards by the media or even by the secular courts of law, because they don't understand the guru tradition. And today many people do not accept the century-old religious principle that some people may willingly surrender a good part of their liberty to a spiritual master. And in many previous seminars, and even today, from these about Tai Ji Men and from Camellia about the parallel with a situation in Europe, we heard how freedom of religion or belief is greatly at risk when spiritual teachers are regarded with malevolence and hostility simply because they are spiritual teachers, and the governments or the police or bureaucrats or tax offices try to break the relation between master and disciples because they do not understand it, and even more because they do not accept that the special relation between guru and disciples creates a way of thinking and lifestyle different from their own. Of course, a textbook example of this malevolence is the attempt by prosecutor Chou in 1996 to break the relationship between Shifu and these in Tai Ji Men. It is also an example of how these attempts normally fail. From what we keep hearing from these, what happened, if anything, is that after the persecution, the relationship between Shifu and these became much stronger. But with which I'm not suggesting that the persecution is a good thing because it made the relations between Shifu and these deeper. Even if this reaction to the persecution is a frequent reaction in the history of religions. The persecution of the first Christians ended up making their community more cohesive and was a component of their eventual global success. This is not a good reason to tolerate persecution and harassment. And in fact, I believe that we should protest against the persecution of spiritual teachers, and that was the title of our webinar today. In all cases, and certainly in the case of Tai Ji Men, because what is persecuted, and as I say, of course, it is possible that in some cases the gurus or spiritual teachers commit common crimes, but in many other cases, the accusations are false. Of course, in the case of Dr. Hong Dao's and the Tai Ji Men, that accusations were false was ultimately certified by the Supreme Court of Taiwan and even got national compensation for having been kept in jail under false accusations. But I believe that in many, if not most cases, accusations against spiritual leaders are false or exaggerated. And in these cases, we should understand the context and understand that certain governments and cultural forces, as Gordon Melton mentioned, and police and prosecutors and regimes, normally the non-democratic ones, but sometimes even some democratic ones, they do not understand the context. They do not understand what the relation between the spiritual master and disciple is, and they don't want to leave alone the persons who decide that they want to enter into this special relation with a master, and they are prepared to surrender a part of their liberty to the master in exchange of the enlightenment or spiritual progress. So these people do not understand, but we do understand. And so we should continue to fight for the freedom of religion or belief of the spiritual masters. With this, our webinar concludes, but still there is a song which was performed last month in Times Square in New York by Dees, and that is a song about the theme of the prayer for peace, which will be the theme of this great non-sectarian initiatives of October 16. So I hope that those who normally follow our webinars can also follow the initiatives of the 1 minute prayer and the global prayer for peace on October 16. So we will now watch the video that will conclude the webinar. Thank you. Camellia resisted until the bitter end and will live.